Hello and welcome to another episode of Three Questions and a Laugh, a new series where I get to talk to really interesting people about really interesting topics, and then I ask them to close the session with a joke, a pun, some funny story to bring a smile to people's face during these difficult times. Super excited about my guest today. My guest today is none other than Pete Rose. Not that Pete Rose, a different Pete Rose, one who I would argue is actually more famous. Pete is a senior partner in the consulting division of Kantar. He's known as one of the nation's leading generational experts, understanding the differences between millennials and Xers and boomers. And he runs a survey called the US Monitor, which is the longest running continuous survey of American consumer attitudes, values, and motivations. Been in the field since 1971. It's a pleasure to welcome him to the show. Pete, welcome to Three Questions and a Laugh.
Thank you very much, Craig. It's really nice to be here. It's good to see your smiling face and to be a part of this really cool series.
Thank you. Well, it's great to have you. Now, the thing I didn't mention about you, my friend, is that you're also a huge sports fan, which is not surprising, given your name is Pete Rose. And there's certainly lots of conversation around sports these days. You've got basketball trying to start up and figuring that out with their playoff system, and baseball now maybe turning the corner on a 60-game season. And the NFL, in my mind, sort of acting like nothing's happening and they're going to have a full 16, 17-game slate. So I also know that your US Monitor has a new product out that you all have created called the Sports Monitor. And I guess we could give a shout out to your buddy Ryan McConnell for that, because I know he was one of the brains behind that. But the Sports Monitor, I understand, helps to understand what's happening in the attitudes and values of the American population around sports. And so I thought your three questions should hover around the topic of sports. How does that sound?
That sounds like a plan. And it's funny because we launched Sports Monitor with a webinar to introduce the idea on about March 5th or so. Perfect timing, right? After the world shut down. So we'll officially be delaying it until the fourth quarter, but we've been talking to sports fans throughout COVID, and it's been pretty illuminating to hear what's going on.
That's awesome. Well, let's start there. So your first question. So based on the Sports Monitor data, based on what you guys have seen of the American consumer and the American sports fan, what is the general appetite for the return of sports? I guess from an attitudinal perspective.
Sure. Let me give just a little bit of background. We actually talked to 3,000 of our, you mentioned US Monitor, that's our annual study of American consumers. We've been talking to lots of them over the last several months. We talked to 3,000 of them from June 8th to the 14th, and 1,700 of them I self-identified as sports fans. So that's the group of people that we're talking about here. Most sports fans are pretty eager for a return of sports. More than 80% of them expect that they're going to be either more engaged or equally engaged with sports once they return. We haven't seen too many of them pursue sports-related activities like watching old games, as I know you and I sometimes have done. A reasonable number have 40, 50%, but a good 30% of them haven't done anything related to sports. So we know that people are chomping at the bit. Here's the big catch, I think. A majority of sports fans are very willing to wait longer if it's going to mean a safer environment for athletes and for team personnel. So we asked a question along those lines. Only 21% of sports fans say that they want sports to return as fast as possible, even if that means that athletes and team employees are exposed to health risks. 56% say they're willing to wait longer, as long as it enables athletes and personnel to assume less risk. And then there's almost a quarter, 23%, who say, I don't believe sports should return at all unless we can assure that folks within the sports world won't have their health in danger. So there's absolutely some patience there. The one other thing I would mention is that there is absolutely the threat of cancellation or postponement, even though we know that things are starting to move ahead. It was interesting to see the percent of sports fans who would express disappointment. The big winner in all this is the NFL. From an attitudinal standpoint, 53% of sports fans said they'd be extremely disappointed or very disappointed if the NFL season were canceled. It's just 42% for Major League Baseball. It was 32% for the NBA playoffs. more people would be disappointed with the NCAA football season or the Tokyo Olympics being canceled. So pretty interesting.
So people are ready. They're not ready to go certainly at any extent. Then they want to make sure there's health and safety for the players. Once they do start happening, what sacrifices, what commitments are sports fans willing to make to begin to attend these? What are they willing to put up with, and what are they not willing to put up with?
Yeah, so I'd say there are two key areas where, if we think about the typical sports fan in terms of sacrifice or commitment, I think about health and I think about finances. So let's talk about the health angle first. Whether we're talking about crowd control or not, sports fans are, I would say, quite wary about attending live events. We know that it's going to take a little while for, even if sports start up again, fans aren't going to be allowed back in. And that seems just fine with most sports fans. In fact, we asked about 10 different types of encounters that people would see as either safe or unsafe. Attending a sporting event was seen as the least safe activity of those 10. And more than 7 in 10 sports fans indicate that going to such an event without any crowd control measures was extremely or very unsafe. If you bring in the kind of crowd control, the social distancing aspect, even then, 56% of sports fans say it's unsafe. And the concerns grow among Generation X, who are roughly 40 to mid 50s, and baby boomers, who are mid 50s to early 70s. And certainly we know millennials buy tickets, but Gen X and baby boomers are the big ones. And so there are concerns there. We even know that about a third won't go anymore, period, or will wait for a vaccine. So we've got a ways before all that happens. From a financial standpoint, and I think before we get to finances, let's talk about hygiene. We see sports fans having a very strong commitment to social distancing, to businesses that enforce guidelines, and they prioritize safety more so than non-sports fans. So more than 80% indicate that they're following social distancing rules completely or most of the time. Most of them are wearing a mask most of the time. Half of them wear them all of the time. And I think sports fans feel a little more vulnerable as well. They are more likely to know people who have caught COVID or they've caught it themselves. So the hygiene angle is a huge one, and something for sports teams, sports leagues to be thinking. The financial angle is the other commitment, and sports fans have a strong financial outlook themselves. They feel reasonably okay with their own situation, but what we're seeing is that a majority of sports fans are reflecting some doubt about being able to afford to go to a sporting event in the near future. 70% of them expect a recession in the next 12 months. I'd argue we're probably already there. Half of them are worried about when they think about the future of the country. In fact, that's their biggest worry ahead of paying bills, balancing work and free time. It is on their minds. And so we know that they are cutting back some of their spending. And as a result, the bottom line is that more than 60% of sports fans think, I don't expect that I'll be able to afford to go to a sporting event anytime soon.
Interesting. You know, it's funny because we're going off script here, but certainly I've seen it in the loyalty space is that organizations are being rewarded for taking care of their customers, to making them feel protected. And I think it's going to be the same with sports teams. I think folks are going to be appreciate the efforts that the sports teams are going to take care of them, because it's top of mind for people is their personal health, for sure.
I completely agree. And we know that sports fans are excited about going ahead and watching sports on TV, but I think they're perfectly happy right now to have that barrier.
Yep.
Willing to sit it out.
So before we get to your third question, let's acknowledge the uniforms we're wearing today. You were wearing what I believe might be a Cleveland Browns football jersey. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Otto Graham. That's right.
And I, of course, am wearing the defending NCAA men's basketball championship jersey of the Virginia Cavaliers. They've been defending champion now for 2 years, which is very exciting.
It's kind of amazing what they've done. They were that good.
They are that good. Hey, so people love to watch sports, but they also love to bet on sports. So your third question is going to be completely off topic here, sort of. But I'm going to ask you, Pete Rose, chief prognosticator, from Kantar to give us some predictions for the three major sports leagues, including whatever you want to say about the season and the eventual champion of whatever they have. So let's do NBA first, and then Major League Baseball, and finish with the NFL.
Sure.
Go.
So I'll throw you a bit of a curveball, and that is that I would argue there is still a very decent likelihood that we will have no champions crowned in 2020. And so as I thought about your question, I figured not only would I give you what I think will play out, but the likelihood that we're going to finish the season. And with the NBA right now in their bubble in Florida, where there's a hotbed of cases, I'd argue there's a 50% chance that the NBA season won't finish.
Wow.
If they do, I'll put my money, and I'm sure you'll say that there's some Cleveland bias here, but I'll put my money on LeBron and the Lakers, because I think he wills the team to the title.
Got it.
You said Major League Baseball next, right?
Yeah, baseball next.
So they're about to start the training camps in home cities a week from now. Now that they've come to agreement, I guess we can call it that. They really haven't reached an agreement, but they're going to settle on a 60-game season. But more and more of these teams, and I think 16 of the 30 major league teams are in states where cases are ramping up. So I'd argue we still have a good 30% chance that we won't have a season. If we do, we have, I think, so much randomness at play, Craig, because if you look after the first 60 games of a season, you're not always seeing the eventual champion. They could be sitting at 26-34. So I think we're going to see some craziness this year. And I would argue, and I went back and forth. I wondered about teams like the White Sox and the Reds who are up and coming. I will go with the Tampa Bay Rays as your World Series champion.
Really?
Tons of arms that they can throw at you all the time. And I would argue that's your safest bet in an uncertain short season.
All right, let's go to the National Football League.
Again, I think you're going to, because it is such a high likelihood of transmission. I think even though they've got the benefit of time because camps aren't going to open up for a little while, but I think we have the same risks as anywhere else. You've got slightly more than half the teams in those increasing case states. So I'd say there's still a 25% chance that we'll have a season. I would also argue that we may see, rather than a 16-game season, we could see a 12-game season. That they'll take week 1, they'll move it to the end of the season. They may chop out weeks 2, 3, and 4 and just pick up starting in week 5. I think your Chiefs will be back in the big game, but I don't see them hoisting the trophy again. I think it could be just the perfect media circus for Drew Brees to be hoisting the trophy, and so I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints. Which is interesting because it's now the end of our friendship based on that answer. But that's, you probably don't notice the Super Bowl 52 a towel hanging off my desk here in the office. So. My eyesight is bad enough that I hadn't noticed it until you put me to it. All right, so those are your predictions. We're gonna keep this tape for posterity, and we're gonna come back to it at the end of each of these seasons and see how you've done. Excellent. That sounds good. You know how we end this in 3 questions and a laugh. I give you a chance to share a story, a pun, a joke, something to bring a smile to people's face. We've known each other a long time. I know your sense of humor. You've made me laugh many times over the years. Here's a chance to do it in front of what I think is probably tens of millions of people watching, or 10, but enough people to make it worthwhile. So in honor of the topic and my own name, and the topic he's associated with, and the fact that it was just Father's Day, I'm going to reflect on a joke that my late father used to tell all the time, and it never got old. So Joe is a huge sports fan, and he loves to bet on sports. And it's October, which is high time for him because all the professional sports are in season, and this is absolute nirvana. So he calls his bookie on Friday because he's old school. He doesn't like to bet online. And he bets $1,000 on 4 of the Major League Baseball playoff games. Loses every single one. Saturday comes, and he calls his bookie, and he bets $1,500 across 7 different college football games. And wouldn't you know, he goes 0-7. Well, Sunday comes around, and now, of course, it's the NFL weekend. Not only does he bet 9 NFL games, there are a couple of NBA games on the slate. He bets all of those. He goes 0-11. He loses $2,500. So Monday comes around, and his bookie's waiting by the phone. There's no call. And he's thinking, well, maybe, Monday Night Football, nothing from Joe. Tuesday comes around, he hasn't heard from him. Mid-afternoon, the bookie calls Joe. He says, Joe, you doing okay? Joe says, I'm terrible. Lost 23 straight bets. I'm on $5,000. The bookie says, well, Joe, there are a couple of NHL games on the slate tonight. And Joe goes, you kidding? What do I know about hockey?
What do I know about hockey? A great punchline from the late Bob Rose. No,
that's my brother.
That's your brother. Oh God, if he watches this,
well, I'm going to send that to him. But the late Norton Rose.
Norton Rose, that's right. So from the great Rose family, you've got great brothers and you've got great kids and a great family. What a treat to spend a few minutes with you talking sports and talking data and talking what's happening in the world. So thank you for making the time. Thanks for bringing a smile to my face, and you always do when we chat. And happy birthday on October 27th.
You as well, Craig. I look forward to catching up with you not only on that day, but before then. And it was a pleasure to be here. I really appreciated the invitation.
Thanks, bud. You too. Take care.
Take care.